My name's Sam Boone, and I'm going to be talking to you about the work that RamCompare has done at Adrian and Lyn Coombe's Dupath Farm down in Cornwall. RamCompare is the National Progeny Test for terminal sire breeds. So we've worked with a set of commercial farmers and provided them with signet recorded rams of known genetic merit and asked them to record the performance of their lambs right the way from birth through to slaughter. This has enabled us to develop a series of new breeding values for abattoir traits and also conduct some other research. It's truly an industry-wide collaboration with funding coming from throughout the UK and a number of people that have provided massive support to the project. So why is RamCompare important? Well, when you're actually going to ram breeders that are performance recorded to purchase rams, they're actually measuring their animals using proxy traits derived from the ultrasound scanner or the CT scanner. But most farmers will actually be rewarded for traits like carcass weight, conformation, or just the speed with which their lambs are finished. So RamCompare helps us to improve our predictions of these economically important traits and also to demonstrate the benefits of using superior genetics. So in the case of Adrian down in Cornwall, he has a large mule flock, predominantly grass finished and grass based down there, and we provided him with a series of terminal sires through both AI and natural mating to test across his flock. So 5 lessons that we've learned from Dupath Farm. The first one is that great farm data helps make great decisions. So we're interested in the sheep out at grass, but what we really want to know is how are they going to perform when the lambs are hung up, and what can we do differently to improve what we're doing, so the use of feedback. To do this, you need a good system of capturing data. And really it's about having EID, simple animal records, support from the abattoir to give you feedback of the lambs that have been slaughtered, and then a quick analysis of the data to make your decisions. So the data is a very important part of what we do. In the case of RamCompare, it's single sire mating that's vital to us, so there's a reminder here about the importance of ram fertility and individual quarantining of rams. So we do large physical checks of the ram, health screening, particularly for things like CLA and sheep scab, both which over the course of the project have thrown up a few results that have challenged us and led to rams being rejected. We also keep an eye out for midivizna, Johne's and border disease. This has greatly reduced the biosecurity risk on the farms, and using rams of known fertility status reduces the risk associated with the single sire mating groups. Second lesson is thinking about assessing the strengths and weaknesses of your system. So that's not just the genetic merit of the ewes and rams, but also seasonal forage availability, health challenges, labour housing, and how the sheep enterprise fits with other enterprises. So a nice example from Dupath was that we've actually realised that by synchronising an early batch of the ewes, it's a great way to reduce the overall peak of lambing, ensuring an early draw and reducing stocking density later in the season. But this is only possible because it makes better use of labour and better use of buildings. So a nice example about thinking about the whole farm system and how it can be run slightly more profitably. Third is we've thought quite a lot about new ways of presenting data. So in the first example here, we're interested in days to slaughter, how quickly lambs finish. And so we've produced charts that enable us to look at both the speed of the early lambs going away and the lag later in the season. You can see here that over the first 2 complete years, massive differences between the season in terms of speed of finishing. And there are some important lessons that we can learn from that by having the data to look at. In my second example, a slightly complicated slide, but we've broken the flock down in terms of quartiles for the lightest through to the heaviest lambs at 8 weeks of age. So no great surprise here to see that those that were heaviest had the least days to slaughter and slightly heavier carcass weights. There's no rocket science in that. But what was interesting when we actually looked at survival rates and mortality is it's very clear that these lambs that were viable and alive at 8 weeks of age, those in the lightest quarter were those that were most likely to have increased mortality, and there's about a 5% difference there in mortality between the lightest quartile and other lambs within the flock. So there are some useful lessons to be learnt from that data that we've managed to tease out through the way that it's presented. So estimated breeding values have been shown to work, and work quite nicely on this commercial farm from the range of breeds that we used. We can see that they are there to help commercial ram buyers identify rams with superior genetics. We've shown there's massive variation within the breeds, and maybe we should focus a bit less on the breed and more about the EBVs within the breed to match the right ram to the right system, and that will obviously depend on your breeding objectives, but we've seen the genetic potential coming through in the lambs. So one example here is we saw very clearly that carcass weight was one of the big drivers on carcass value when we looked at the data from Dupath, and we can see that if we plot scan weight EBV, so that's one of the breeding values that's available when you're buying a ram, against carcass weight, there's quite a nice relationship there amongst the rams that were used that shows the impact of selecting the high scan weight EBV rams. But it's not all about carcass weight, and obviously we have a capped carcass weight, so we also need to think about days to slaughter. So looking at data here for Charolais rams taken across the whole project, you can see a really nice relationship between the scan weight EBV and days to slaughter. You can see that rams with very high scan weight EBVs are finishing a week to a fortnight more quickly than those of more average genetic merit, and this makes a really big difference. And finally, EBVs make a massive financial difference. So we've actually looked at the amount of money that's been generated by these individual rams. If we actually have a look at the relative financial value of lambs, so this is the difference per lamb compared to the flock average, versus the sire's breeding index that was generated through RamCompare, we can see quite a nice relationship here between the rams. And amongst the majority, there's easily a £3 a lamb difference between the higher and the slightly lower performing sires, bearing in mind that these were all high genetic merit rams that we were tending to use. And that difference over a ram's working lifetime would easily be worth an extra £1,000. So there's a very clear link between genetics and financial value. So the 5 lessons from Dupath Farm: one is the importance of data. Secondly is about appraising and understanding your system, setting breeding objectives so you get the right genetics. Third is thinking about new ways to present and analyse data. Fourth is that EBVs work. And 5 is that they make a big financial difference. So next steps for the project is that we've got a series of rams being tested this year. You can see the breeds and the people that have provided them listed. So we're quite excited about getting abattoir data from those. Most of them are finishing very fast. We'll have that analysed soon. And if you would like more information, do head to the Signet website. There you can see a publication of the Year 4 results based on last year's data. There's a bit of information there about Adrian and Lyn and the farm down in Cornwall, and a bit more information about RamCompare in general. And finally, a massive thank you to all members of the Coombe family. This has been a fantastic project and we've really enjoyed working with you. Thank you for all your support over the last couple of years.